Awesome Mayo here with today's WBE lesson. Money brilliance is a skill. Or we could say income brilliance is a skill, just like making money. Understanding how to make money is a skill. Making money is a skill. People often mistake skill for talent because if they see somebody doing better or more than they are, it feels better to justify the disparity in accomplishments with the randomness of natural talent. If they were to look at their achievements as the result of skill and training, then they would have to admit their own shortcomings, so it's much easier to downplay the importance of skill and training. Making money is no different. It is a skill, and so is brilliance. You can train your brain to get better at getting better. Most people don't understand that the brilliance of building companies, the brilliance of making money is a skill that can and should be learned. Any financial cost that is paid to learn this skill is a tiny investment that any smart person should happily pay with gratitude. You just have to make sure you learn from the right person. Creating income is a skill, and what many people call natural intelligence or natural brilliance is neither enough nor necessary. Learn the right skill. Brilliance is a skill. Now, brilliance can be narrow, but it is a skill. Hopefully you've studied our stuff on neuroplasticity and how the brain works with dendrites and all that stuff. This is all a skill. You can focus on what you want to get smarter at, and if you don't get better at the skill of making money, it won't matter how smart you get in other areas because you'll only make money on accident. No bueno. Don't do that. Every action that your company takes should be done on purpose. Let's talk about two very similar men with two very different experiences. The first guy's name was Taylor, and he was a genius. Sounds like me. He was a genius, a real genius. Ever since he was a child, everybody knew how smart this boy was. However, throughout all of his life, there was one problem he always had: money. Even though he was a genius, he had constant money problems. He was in and out of debt, chased by collectors. He had to borrow money to live on. He was involved with endless lawsuits that prevented him from being paid. He even had to borrow money to fight his lawsuits. Every business that he started would eventually end in failure. He had several jobs, but he was always under the threat of being fired overnight. He lost sleep. He had domestic problems. He even missed his own son's funeral because of finances. That's when his depression started, which led to his alcoholism. Eventually, his relapses caused him to get medical retirement. Every business that he ever started would eventually fail. With one business, he was having so many troubles making ends meet that he sold his life insurance policy, but even that was not enough, and the bank started calling his loans due. His personal assets were seized. His business assets were repossessed, and the IRS even came down to his building and physically locked the place down. This would be his last setback. After this disaster, Taylor slipped back into depression and became an alcoholic again. This caused health problems that he never recovered from, and that is how he died. It's a sad ending, and this guy was a genius, a real genius. He was brilliant, and it's amazing how his biggest problems could all be traced back to money. It's crazy how much of a problem lack of money caused this guy. Taylor's story ended tragically, no doubt about it. So let's keep that in mind. We'll come back to him, but for now, let's move on to our second guy. Our second guy was a genius too, and it was obvious from an early age with him as well. His legacy lives on today, but it all started with his love of electronics and physics and chemistry and all sorts of other brainy stuff. As a child, he won a local contest by inventing a magnetized car lock. As a child, he invented it. Then as a teenager, he was teaching his math classes, and at 15, he figured out a way to send images through the air. Images through the air. This was kind of like our other story with Caselli, but this wasn't sending images over cable. This was sending images through the air. This was an idea he was obsessed with, sending images through the air. It just sounds so funny. And one day, while plowing his father's field, he looked at the rows that he just made, and he realized that he could catch light in the same way, line by line, and send it somewhere else, just like that, line by line. And by the time he was 21, he had done exactly that. He sent a picture through the air, and he even got a patent on his idea. His name was Philo Farnsworth, and he's considered one of the fathers, one of the main inventors of today's television. Farnsworth also invented the image dissector. Isn't that a cool name? It was a video camera tube thing that took images and it converted them into electronic signals. This is how the Olympics were broadcast from Germany in the 30s. Although that's not all that Germany was known for doing back then. Am I right? Right? Nothing? Nothing. Randall's not laughing. Not funny for Randall. Come on. A little German humor? No. Okay, Randall doesn't think it's funny. Trying to make Randall laugh, he's not laughing. He doesn't think that's funny. This is also, by the way, the image dissector is also how the world was able to watch the first footsteps on the moon. On the moon, remember that? Russia? And so it was this image dissector. Okay, that got Randall laughing. So what's the lesson, the moral lesson I'm getting for Randall? Start 2 world wars, that's okay, but protect Snowden and Randall's coming after you. Okay, the image dissector was actually sending us images back to Earth from the moon. And actually, Farnsworth was not a big fan of the television. He told his kids there's nothing on it worthwhile, and I don't want it in your intellectual diet. That's an interesting way to put it. But when he saw the landing on the moon, he said it was all worth it. So happy ending there. And the technology that he developed, this dissector, the image dissector, it's still used and modeled today with everything from movies, the TV, and the entire internet. He was brilliant. And by the way, Germany, Russia, we're just playing with you. You know we love you guys. Now, Farnsworth also started multiple businesses. He had several high-profile jobs and positions at high-profile companies and universities. Everywhere he went, he left his mark. He had inventions or breakthroughs with everything from infrared telescopes, submarine awareness systems, fog reduction pulses for large boats, all the way to improved defense warning radar precision hardware, and he even found a way to sterilize milk using radio waves. What the heck? He also came up with something called the PPI to assist in airplane tracking, and that laid the groundwork for what is today's air traffic control system used around the world. He also dabbled in nuclear fusion, who hasn't, and he invented a machine for nuclear fusion. You know, one of the toughest problems with fusion research, and I was just thinking about this the other day, is that when the fuel hits the walls, it loses the enhanced temperature needed for fusion reaction. Any idiot knows that, but what Farnsworth figured out is that you could focus. The electrons could be focused and they could act as a wall, and then that pressure combined with the high velocity introduction of fuel helps to, you can see where this is going, keep the plasma centered, which is ideal for nuclear fusion, right? Now he called this idea, obviously, inertial electrostatic confinement. This concept and the term that he came up with are still used today. You probably hear about it all the time if you listen to rap music, and I think it's the ball that you touch and your hair sticks up, or it might be a way to heat your home, or maybe it just kills people. I don't know. Here's a picture of Einstein. Moving on, Farnsworth was a nut, and he's been honored with plaques and statues and inductions and awards and recognition all over the place. Here are just a few examples. The Broadcast Pioneers of Philadelphia Hall of Fame, he got inducted in there. He got in the San Francisco Hall of Fame in there. The TV Academy Hall of Fame, he had a TV and Pioneer Museum in Idaho. One of the first image dissectors ever is on display at a Fry's Electronics in California. A bronze statue, he has a bronze statue in the U.S. Capitol building. The Parks and Recreation Department has a plaque where his lab used to be in San Francisco. At his old home in Fort Wayne, Indiana, has also got a plaque. The Walt Disney at the Epcot Center, they've got a plaque there. Go anywhere in Brownfield, Maine, there's all sorts of streets and buildings named after him. Utah's got a mountain range named after him, Farnsworth Peak. George Lucas's companies, Industrial Light and Magic and LucasArts and Lucasfilms, they've all headquartered into the Letterman building. The Letterman building's a pretty big deal. Farnsworth has a statue there. There's a guy that's called the Spielberg of Hollywood screenwriting, Aaron Sorkin. He's behind the Facebook movie, Moneyballs, You Can't Handle the Truth, and a whole bunch of other stuff. Sorkin, like myself, is kind of a big deal in Hollywood, and he actually wrote a play called The Farnsworth Invention about Philo Farnsworth. In 1999, Time magazine named Farnsworth one of the 100 most important people of the century, right below me, and in 2006, long after his death, he was awarded the Eagle Scout. His wife accepted the award on his behalf. Now, there's a whole bunch of other stuff, but you get the idea. Farnsworth was a genius, and he was lucky enough to be born during a time where his genius, his brilliance was recognized, universally recognized. He's regarded as a genius, and he definitely left his mark. Now, compare him to our first guy, Taylor, who constantly struggled with money, depression, lawsuits, alcohol, domestic problems. And I'm not going to say that he drank himself to death, because it was a combination of all those problems, but when you compare Taylor to Farnsworth, it makes you wonder, what was the difference? This guy over here, Taylor, suffered so much just because he didn't know how to make money. That was his main problem. Then you look at a guy as accomplished as Farnsworth, and it's like they don't even seem like they belong in the same category, let alone here on the same page, right? You take a look at Taylor, and it's like, what the heck does he even have to do with Farnsworth? What's the difference between these two guys? One would easily conclude that there is a canyon-sized difference between the two, right? Well, one would be as wrong as necrophilia, because the difference between these two is tiny. The difference is microscopic. The difference is, in fact, non-existent, because Taylor's full name is Philo Taylor Farnsworth. Farnsworth is Taylor. Taylor is Farnsworth. Finkel is, I don't know, okay, Taylor is Farnsworth. These two mother Russias are the exact same guy. What that means, think about that, what that means is that even someone as brilliant as Farnsworth had his life completely destroyed because of money, or lack thereof, and it caused the problems that eventually killed him. And guess how much money, by the way, guess how much money eventually sent Farnsworth out of business and into depression and to addiction and ultimately to his death? Think about how much money it was. You probably have a large amount in your mind, right? Someone as brilliant as Farnsworth? Well, it was only about $20,000 a month. That was it, just 20 grand a month. It's amazing that a genius like Farnsworth would be brought to his knees and his business would eventually be destroyed just because of 20 grand a month. His life went into a tailspin that led to his death over $20,000 a month. Isn't that amazing? Now, there are a few main reasons that this is so important. First, it really makes it clear that making money and intelligence can be totally divorced. If the skill of making money was based purely on intelligence, then there's no way that a guy like Farnsworth would have been broke and had the experience that he had. Remember, he had to miss his own son's funeral. So brilliance is never enough. Intelligence is never enough, and it's not even necessary. Most people believe the exact opposite, but not you, right? Not at least not anymore, right? The second big lesson, the second big reason we're talking about it is to understand that even though Farnsworth was a success by any objective or material measure, this was a very troubled guy. And although his issues like depression and alcoholism may not have been totally related to financial issues, it's been proven again and again that having to go through constant money problems is a catalyst for things like depression, alcoholism, substance abuse, you name it. So imagine how much more he could have done and how much better, how much of an improvement in the quality of his life he could have had if money wasn't such an issue. And remember, he spent much of his time fighting legal battles and borrowing money to fight legal battles. His life would have been totally different. He would have had much more time and energy to innovate if money wasn't such a problem. And lastly, the reason this is so important, and this is probably the biggest, most important reason, he isn't alone, it's not that hard to fix, and you owe it to the world to help solve these kinds of problems. This is what our stuff is all about. What's probably the most striking thing about Farnsworth is that what finally took him under, what led to his drinking complications, that led to his illness, and eventually to his death, the amount of money that we're talking about wasn't millions of dollars. It was only about $20,000 a month. And I talked to folks all around the world with both young and old people alike, and there are so many people with so much brilliance that are just like this. They have so much brilliance, but they never get the right education, the right training to create and capitalize on the right opportunities. They just don't get a chance. That's the main reason why my friends and I do what we do. I want everybody to have the chance that was given to me. It's really tragic, and it's one of the biggest driving forces in everything that I do and everything that all my friends and everybody on our team does. And everything that we do, this is a driving force. And when it comes to working with students, by the way, I'm only interested in working with students who understand that this is a global problem and who want to help fight, who want to help solve it, and want to help spread opportunity instead of just making money for themselves. I want you to get rich, that's obvious. But on top of that, you need to be helping all the people like Farnsworth around the world. Making money is a skill, and since it can be learned, that means it can be taught. The greatest gift the world has ever known is education, and you can be one of the givers of that gift. And if I have any overall theme with all my stuff, this is what it's all about. It's that, giving a gift of generational significance. It's what being a social architect is all about, which, by the way, if you haven't gone through the essay class, I highly recommend it. It's actually required if you want to apply to become a student, so please go through it. We get a lot of great feedback on it, so please go through it. You know, one of our students and friends, Gary X, sent me a quote that somebody sent him, and I don't know who came up with it, but it's really interesting. It's a question, and it can really help put things in perspective. So just think about this for a second. What if the cure for cancer is trapped inside the mind of somebody that can't afford education? It's a powerful concept, and it points to a problem my students and I fight to solve. And you can start just in your community. You'll see people like Farnsworth all around you, people who have real brilliance, but because of money problems, that brilliance is never brought to fruition. There is dormant brilliance all around you and within each of us. Sometimes it just needs the escort of opportunity. You can be that trigger. Become a shepherd of brilliance. The difference that you'll see in people will be obvious. It's like being in love. You instantly light up a superhighway of thoughts and emotion, like a fluorescent caterpillar within you that comes to life, that you never knew was there. But it was there. It's always there, no matter how neglected, ignored, second-guessed, or doubted. Even if you don't know or believe that it's there, it's there. That potential is always there. But few people are lucky enough to realize it. You can be the catalyst for that, the catalyst of potential. First, you fix your income situation, which you can do at the same time as helping others, by the way. Then you focus on becoming that rising tide that raises the ships all around you. Here's a great student example. And this is something I recommend to all my students. It's something that all of us, it's something that everybody should be doing. It's called the Brilliance Challenge. There's a few different names for it. Now, here's a great example on how a student used this. Not long ago, we were working with a young woman, Kate Hoisted, and she was at a dead-end job. Even though she had my stuff for a while, she never did anything with it, and she never got very serious about creating income until one day, a friend of hers needed a ride. And when she picked up her friend, she hit a nail and she got a flat tire. Because of that flat tire, she missed a day of work, and that, the cost of missing work, plus the cost of getting her tires changed, meant that she didn't have the money to send her son on a field trip. And when that happened, and her son found out what happened, her son said in kind of a frustrated, like rhetorical way, "Why did you have to give your friend that ride?" Now he said it kind of under his breath, but loud enough for Kate to hear it, and at that moment something happened. She realized the true pain of her predicament. She had created a scenario where money was such a problem that her son was questioning why she should help people. She realized that she was in a financial situation that was so fragile that all it took was a tiny nail. Just a tiny nail could make such a big difference. And seeing that look of disappointment on her son's face, her own embarrassment with her finances, and then to see her son develop a bitterness towards being a helping hand to a friend, she finally got disgusted enough to do something about it. Now at the time, like I said, Kate was at a dead-end job as if there's any other kind. Then she started doing some real estate stuff with Millie. They started finding lease option tenants for homes, and they were splitting the down payment with her agents that she trained. And you can pretty much do this with any house, by the way. A lease option, there's a lot of different ways to do it. A common way to do it is where you would get the down payment money, which is anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000, and then the seller or the owner gets the monthly payment and the back end money when the buyer refinances the house. So that's what Katie started doing, and she trained her agents to do most of pretty much everything. We have a lot of students doing this, and so it was less than, I don't know, I think about 30 to 60 days, she was making about 10 to 15 grand a month. So that's pretty cool, right? A lot of people, most people would stop there, but not Kate. And really not any of my students. I'd say normal people would stop there and pat themselves on the back, but my students, the social architects, know that that's just the beginning. So then she started working. Kate went to a local battered women's shelter, and it took a little bit of screening, but eventually she found 2 solid gals and she brought them under her umbrella. Together, the 3 ladies built a business, but they also took a portion of their money every month and they put it towards building a new women's shelter. This is a whole model that I teach on its own. There's so many reasons that you want to do this. One of them is that the government loves when you do stuff like this, and they make it very worth your while. They make it so worth your while, in fact, that it's really silly not to build your companies like this, where you build a separate organization at the same time, but it's still like nobody does it, like nobody knows about it, but it's something you should all be doing. So she expanded. Basically she was doing her deals, then she started expanding more and more with these gals. She started doing larger and larger deals, working on several deals at a time, and very quickly Kate and her transaction tech girlfriends built a company and a group at the same time. Fast forward, her income was over $35,000 a month, and that group that the 3 girls started is now more than double the size. They have twice as many women as the original shelter group. So not only is she making more money, but the girls are making more money, and now think of all the extra women that they're helping now that were not being helped before. So that's pretty cool in itself, right? And she could have stopped at just 10 or 15 grand a month, but she pushed on. Now at this point she could have stopped, but she didn't because she's such a good student. So they started doing this every month. She held a Brainiac competition. Now, as I said, this is a huge secret on its own. It can make a huge difference in everything that you're doing. Anytime my students work with a group of people, or really anytime anybody, whether any of our students or kids work with any group of people, I always suggest and train people to do this. A brilliance challenge or a brilliance competition. It's basically something where everybody in a given group of people that you're working with, they all promote this contest, this challenge to everybody that they know. So once a week or at some predetermined interval, they compete with each other to share their best and most brilliant ideas. You start doing this and it's unbelievable how many great ideas people have. It's also a great way to take challenges that you personally are having and ask 500 or how many ever people to come up with the best answer. Remember, none of us is as smart as all of us. And this is one way that we've been able to invent so many different models of buying and selling companies, by the way, by borrowing brilliance. And by the way, there's more to it than just asking people for something. You don't want to do that. Remember, people love giving advice, people love feeling smart, and people love getting recognition. So there is a rehearsed way that you want to do this with expected intervals, participant recognition, defined goals, preset expectations, specific viral ingredients to spread the word, exact instructions on how to present their ideas. There is a science and a dialogue to how to do this properly. It's just like anything else. It comes down to being trained to do this correctly, which Kate was. So anyway, she held this brilliance contest and they increased the interval. So it started once a month, then it was once every other week, and then eventually it was every week. Everybody would meet and bring their best ideas to solving a problem. So one day a young man showed up. His call sign was Zell, and he had some great ideas about how to use video chatting with different classes at his school. He also had a great idea on how the school could use an internal network and they could work on making art where several kids could share and work on a single canvas and make additions and pass it around, so the result would be a collaboration of different artists in the school, and these pieces of art could be done and sold very quickly. It was a pretty cool way, like using an internal network that artists could display their work within the school system, and then they could also sell it to donors. And he had some pretty cool, I'm not familiar with all of his ideas, but he had some really great ideas. I'm not as familiar with everything, but I know he was a sharp kid and he brought some real brilliance. But his biggest problem was that he was broke. So here's what Millie and Kay did with him. This is another big compliance move. Whenever you have somebody who's potentially hungry or ambitious, but you're not sure how to work with them or how they can make money, or even if you do know, this is still a great exercise, a great qualifier. It's also a great teacher to have the individual come up with the solution. So that's what they did. They explained some of the real estate stuff to this young man, and they told him what the challenges were that they were having with the model. And then they asked asked him to come up with a solution that he could be a part of. He was asked to develop a solution and a role that he could play in that solution so that he could make money too. You see how that works? This is a really powerful lesson, because remember that with each company you build, people should be able to come in and work with you, and they should be able to get rich working within your umbrella. Building your empire is building their empire. So instead of looking for ways to cut corners or to cut people out of money and pay them less, which is what everybody does, you want to find excuses to pay your people more and more and more. And if you don't know how to do that, if you don't know how to hire somebody and pay them, let's say 20 to 30 grand a month, for example, this is a great way to start. Explain the situation and then have them come up with the answer. Have them fill in the blanks with their ideas. You provide a canvas and a brush of opportunity and let them illustrate their ambitions. This also helps avoid nasty situations where you're trying to sell people on why they should work with you, or you're out there trying to convince people that you can help them make big money. I've seen so many people get caught in that trap. So this is an effective way to start extracting brilliance and building your team. Not only can you have people bring their ideas, but you can also have them bring their plan of execution, where they come up with the ruler that they want you to use to measure them with. In general, when you treat people as if they have great ideas, when you realize that everybody you ever meet knows something that you don't, when you focus on revealing buried, forgotten, or neglected brilliance within people, you will have an unprecedented level of compliance with them. People hate to disappoint. Expect brilliance from them and they will deliver it. Okay, so this kid from the inner city with no experience or background in real estate came up with a brilliant idea that we have used and modified and improved, and this idea has made my students millions of dollars. So here's exactly how part of it works. He came up with the idea of going to the same area where Kate and Millie were buying houses, where they were focused, and he would go to his school and he would print out a bunch of flyers to send home with the kids. So each parent would get a flyer, and the flyers basically said that the school was partnering with some real estate guys and they were going to start buying and selling houses, and the partners, the friends of the school, were going to split the money that they made with the school to help improve the school. So if any of the parents had a home that they needed to sell, or if they knew somebody who was in trouble or needed to get an offer on their house in the next 24 hours, then they can call right now. You see how that works? Now, as a side note, by the way, think about the credibility this adds to what you're doing. When you're doing it with the school, it's a pretty effective, credibility builder. Now, once the replies came in, what do you do with all those houses? Well, you go back to all the parents with another flyer that has a list of all the homes that are now for sale. You can also try moving the house on your own, by the way, but you might as well try and see what kind of compliance you get from that same group of people. And you may recognize this technique. This is called a self-serve. And just so we get on the same page, I'll explain it very quickly. A transaction basically has two parts, a consumer and a provider/servicer. So a self-serve is when you use a single group of people to serve both sides of a transaction. An example would be, let's say you target a group of medical clinics. You send them out a letter or something where you talk about buying any practices that are for sale. Then you subtract the replies and go back to the same group of people and let them know that since they didn't want to sell since they didn't want to sell their practice, here's some other practices that they can buy. You see how that works? You basically make yourself the gatekeeper, and this can be extremely profitable. At a recent workshop, Tim Piter outlined exactly how he's been doing this self-serve about twice a year with the medical groups, like I just talked about, exactly what I just said. He does a self-serve about twice a year, and over the last 3 years, he's made over $40,000 a month. 40 grand a month for 3 years, doing a medical self-serve, doing a self-serve with medical clinics. 40 grand a month for 3 years. What I'm saying is that this concept of self-serve, this technique has been around for a while. It's something we've been doing for years, but we never did it the way that Zell came up with. Zell applied that brilliance in a new way. And when you buy and sell houses like this, usually the least profitable way that you're going to do it is you're going to assign a lease option. And when you do that, you're going to make about $3,000 to $5,000. But even if you just make a few $1,000s, this is so profitable because you're doing several deals at once. So that makes sense, right? You go to a school, you have hundreds, thousands of people there that first you're getting houses from, and then you're moving houses to the same group of people. And by doing this, you're doing several deals at once. You get an idea of how profitable it is. And I don't have time to get into all the tweaks and all the improvements and all the extra policies and all the other badass policies that have been added to this. But since then, this idea, as always, has been improved and improved. So imagine what happens when you work with a superintendent. So instead of hundreds or thousands of parents, you reach tens of thousands of parents at a time from several different schools. Then think about when you have parents work as volunteers to make calls, to put up ads, to put out signs, even raise money from donor lists. They're also a great army of volunteers to help fix up houses, like on those TV makeover shows where a group of people fix up a house overnight. And by working with volunteers, it's done faster and cheaper. So not only can you get houses fixed, but you can also get the private money to fund your deals from the same source that you get the deals from. There's so much more to this that I won't get into right now, but you get the idea, right? You see how this is like a shockingly profitable endeavor. But the real point is that the seed of all this came from Zell. That was the snowball that put this avalanche of profit into motion. So anyway, that's the basics of what Kate had him do. And how do you think this young man did? How do you think his financial situation improved? His cut alone was over $10,000 a month. It would have been much more than that, but they made him save and invest it. They came up with a plan to help him save and invest it automatically. dramatically, but his entire family was able to move, and he's been able to help his sister's family and people all around him. And then what do you think Kate had him do? She had him do his own little brilliance competition with the people in his community. And that's really what this is. The people at these schools, they can help rebuild their communities. They can help save their neighborhoods. And when Kate worked with him to do their own little competition, from that, a brother and sister, they came across a brother and sister, and I want to know the details, but by the time I started recording this, I didn't have all the details, so I don't know exactly what they did. But this new brother and sister, they either have a contract signed or it's in the works with the Tesla Motor Company. One of the kids came up with a generator or something that's going to help them do more something. I don't know what's going on. Maybe it's not a big deal. Maybe it won't be a huge success, or maybe it won't even get signed or make them any money. You know, it might not be the next TV is what I'm saying. But the point is that it's something. It's something that this brother and sister, this family that's far removed from Kate. Look how far removed they are from Kate. But it was the domino effect that she put in place where she was able to help them. You see the effect she was able to have? And that's my point. That if it wasn't for her, they'd hopelessly be looking for jobs, chasing money, and these ideas would have been buried and probably never realized. Only when she was able to help them replace their income were they able to devote their time to their hobbies, their passion. And maybe it would have happened anyway, but if you've done the numbers, you know that it probably never would have happened. And think about all the potential these people now have in their future, all the crazy stuff they can do in the future. Even if the Tesla thing doesn't work out, you still see the power, right? And I don't have the details on the Tesla thing. You know me, I always like to have the specifics, but I just sat down to do this and I asked for a recent example this lesson, and this is what Millie chose. This is what she picked. But this really embodies the spirit of what I'm talking about. This is what we're all about. This is a skill, and anybody that's hungry can learn to do this. And by mastering this yourself, you can be that ladder for an entire community, just like Kate is. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. And to really see the difference, I mean, take a step back for a second and think about this. First, there's Kate, right? Look at all the people she was able to help. First, it was the women's shelter, the actual shelter. Then it was the gals that she started working with. Then it was all the women in the separate group that they started. That's now over twice as many people, by the way, than were in the original group. Then there was Zell, who for the rest of his life will know that he can dictate his own income. Then there was his entire family. And then there's all the people involved every week in the brilliance challenges that they continue to do. And then it was that brother and sister. And think about the confidence they have as kids signing deals with a company like Tesla to get that idea funded. Think about all these people for a second. You see the ripple effect? And with the women's shelter gals, the ladies, Zell, the Tesla kids, they all had untapped brilliance in them. Kate served as a lightning rod to get it out. And now they'll never be in a situation where being broke is anything other than a choice. These people had brilliance. These people, just like Farnsworth, had brilliance. But unlike Farnsworth, they're not sentenced to a life of financial darkness. Not anymore. This is just so badass, isn't it? I mean, if this is not what you want to do, my goodness, my stuff is not for you. Stop watching. Go away. I'm not your guy. And by the way, the only reason, the real source of so many problems is really just being an LC. It's just being lazy. And if you have people like that, I gotta tell you, be warned of the LC. You need to be trained. You need to be trained to spot them and isolate them quickly. And if you ever find yourself mimicking their behaviors, adjust accordingly and immediately, for the line between acting like an LC and becoming one is paper thin. You don't want to be anything like those mother grabbers. They don't see challenges as something to beat or rise above, but as reasons to quit. So seeing even potential obstacles gets them as excited as a child going through a pack of new baseball cards. Brilliance is wasted on them because they'll take a gem of brilliance and scrutinize every facet of it like it's a rare diamond until they find some reason to invalidate it. And they'll be very impressed by themselves for going through that exercise. They'll high-five themselves for being so much smarter than everybody else, for being savvy enough to rationalize their inactivity. They'll say things like, see, I told you that stuff doesn't work, or I knew it was too good to be true, or our favorite, that doesn't work in my area. They never realize that they are doing the all too common practice of dismantling the ladders of opportunity to build their own prison. The world's strongest prisons don't have bars. The world's most docile inmates don't know they're in prison. If you aren't aggressively identifying and distancing yourself from LCs, you are on the way to becoming one. Most people have a phone book of excuses, not accomplishments. Every day you will add to one or the other. You will always find a reason to do less or more. Squash the negative momentum starting right now. Don't choose darkness. Embrace the pain that comes with running towards and embracing the light and spreading that light to others. Like our friend DMX said, we each have a star. All we have to do is find it. Once you do, everybody who sees it will be blinded. Right now, all around you, there are people with Farnsworth type of brilliance, but it will never be revealed. Not without you. You can help them get to the other side. No matter how desolate or hopeless it may seem to them, you can help them shine. You can laser through the shadows like fresh sunlight through a dark barn, and they will thank you for it. You'll get to see the transformation right in front of you. You'll see their self-image and confidence fill up like a glass of water. If you want to know how easy it is to have a negative impact on people, just turn on the TV. It's it's easy, and because it's the lowest denominator, so many people do it. But real brilliance isn't just in making people feel better, but helping them actually get better. The better you sharpen this skill, the easier it'll come to you, and you'll see the real difference that you're making. People will see your superhero cape from a mile away. Your helping hands will lift the otherwise destitute. And when you talk shop, you'll have all the certainty of somebody spelling their own name. So, given the fact that you have access to our stuff, don't settle for less. Come on now. Be a superhero. Be a superhero. And finally, remember this. Uncompromising rigidity is the best gift you can give your desires. Any goal, financial or otherwise, is the result of choices and micro decisions that you are making every minute of every hour of every day. Don't allow the blubber of lazy to suffocate your aspirations. Slice through laziness with the blade of willpower. And by the way, if you want me to take you by the hand and personally train you in all manner of badass shizzle, then go to WeBuildEmpires.com. That's where you want to be. See if applications are being accepted, because if they are, you should be all over it like a New York politician on a Woman of the Night. Oh my goodness, shouldn't be going there. Seriously, WeBuildEmpires.com. And I have to say, just think about this. Think about the stuff that we've covered, everything that we touched on just today, right here, right now. We talked about Farnsworth. It's always good to know history and business history. Then we touched on everything from setting up a women's group with no money out of pocket, building your team by transforming people who have no voice and really limited opportunity outside of what you do for them, and taking those people who are often overlooked and turning them into badass performers. We talked about using the challenge brilliance to rebuild communities. We also had an intro into the powerful self-serve technique and how to save schools, families, and companies from devastation. Also, how doing just a couple of deals a year can pull in over 40 grand a month. And remember, income dictation, this is a brilliant concept where people come to you and they tell you how they want to bring you $50,000, for example, and then you pay them $25,000 out of the 50 or 100 grand that they bring you. It's these little tweaks. This is how you revitalize broken education systems and help disadvantaged youth and start spreading opportunity. And you can build a serious business around all this, several companies around doing stuff like this. And we've covered actually a whole lot more, but think about this. You and I have only been talking for about 30 minutes. And since making these classes available, I get some amazing feedback from folks all around the world. People tell me how they go through these classes again and again and again. They go through it with a fine-tooth comb. They study this stuff like law students studying the night before a big final. And I know that the general rule is that I should tone it down a little bit, that I shouldn't go over so much. And instead I should tease you or give you just enough to be annoying, but I also know that you appreciate that I do not do that and that I drown you in opportunity. The right person uses these classes as a weapon against mediocrity, a shining torch to navigate through financial darkness, to illuminate a dim runway. It's like at the end of Die Hard 2, the runway at the end of that movie. You can use this stuff to create a blazing runway to potential and opportunity that otherwise would be invisible. And this was only 30 minutes. Like I said, imagine what happens when you immerse yourself in this stuff, not just for half an hour, but for hours, for days, for weeks, months. Think about the type of person that you're able to become. A secret superhero. Holy moly, this is about a lot more than just making money. And it's, how could anybody just like this or allow for anything short of obsessive pursuit to getting yourself trained to perform this better and better and better? You've got to love this stuff. Or, maybe not. That's possible too. This is definitely not for everybody. Most people have got their head in the sand and they'll just wait and hope for somebody else to take care of business. And make no mistake, everybody is, you are categorizing, you are self-sorting yourself right now. You've already decided who you are. Every day you just confirm it. But you can always make a better choice. It's never too late to decide on being a better version of yourself and then focusing all your resources on being that person. Whenever I work with anybody, my first goal is I just want to make sure that they see the path and then they can choose who they want to be. And please, by the way, please go through the social architect class, the essay class. It's on the application page. It really, even if you and I never work together, it really explains the situation pretty clearly. And for the right person, this application process and everything, it's like a dating site. I know who I want and I know what I don't want. I know what I can work with and what I don't want to work with. And you can easily qualify yourself. But I'll say this, for the right person, they aren't going to wait around until applications are being accepted. They're going to be begging. They're going to be all over us to get them going immediately. They're going to fight tooth and nail, climb over barbed wire, gargle broken glass, let Edward Scissorhands trim their eyebrows just for a chance, just for a chance to get the application process going early. Okay, we got to stop. We're going past our time. Bottom line, please take this stuff seriously. Take a step towards changing somebody's life. Even if it's just a step, take that step in a new direction or move just a little faster. Starting today, right now, in the next 24 hours, make a more pronounced difference in the life of another. Okay, WeBuildEmpires.com. If and when applications are being accepted, or maybe not. Maybe you go crazy and you cut to the front of the line, but if and when applications are being accepted, I highly suggest that if this is for you and you already know if it is or not, that you are all over it. If and when applications are being accepted, you want to be all over it. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you so much for all the support. I really appreciate it. You have my thanks and my gratitude. Okay, until Until next time, thanks again and God bless.